What's up, you guys? Jeff Rowe back again, and here we are back to work on this K5 Blazer. So in the last episode, I showed you how to punch through the firewall. What happens when a lot of young guys start to want to get excited, put roll cages in their truck, is they tend to not realize the sheer volume of preparation work that actually goes into what we're doing here. So they'll tend to get in a hurry and things like that, and that's where you're going to start making mistakes. All right, so I'm not going to compromise any of those things, and they're time consuming since I'm the one doing all the work here, you know, and trying to film this for you guys, which is all right by me. I don't mind. But I need to get the truck done, obviously. I can't take forever, right? So what happens is the sheer volume of work becomes a little bit overwhelming, and that's when people get in a hurry and start making mistakes, so we can't do that. All right, so what my intention is today is I still need to punch the holes through the floor where my cage will transition through the floor back into the frame underneath the truck. They're called the tie-in or cage landings. And there's a couple different ways to do cage landings. I'm going to cover those. I'm going to show you guys a couple of examples. I have a picture here. And what we're going to do is punch those holes. And then I noticed on the underside of this thing, there's some undercarriage protection. That's additional sheet metal that I'm going to need to cut out of my way to access the frame underneath this truck. So I can't just take a hole saw on one cut. It's going to take some work. So I need to get this truck up in the air. All right. And get those holes punched in, and then I'm going to get ready to start bending tubes. Got the tube bender in there all set up, ready to go, but I need to get this truck prepped first, and that's really what's important. When it comes to metal fabrication and things like that, prep work is almost everything. That's 80% of the job. The other 20% is basically welding it up, which is the easy part in my opinion. I've been welding a long time, so it comes pretty easily. But the metal work itself, preparation, metal prep, all of that stuff, cleanliness next to godliness, so on and so forth. So I'm going to punch some holes in the floor of this truck, and then we're going to get inside the shop there, and we're going to start bending up some tubes. The reason that's important is each one of my cage landings, all right, that's where the cage comes through the body, ties back into the frame, we call it a landing, all right, is going to have a sleeve in it. That's why I covered that in the last episode, right? So I'm going to put a sleeve in all of those, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the cage through the floor, and not quite a full 90-degree angle. What happens is if I come under the floor and I tie directly into the cage with a perfect 90 right here, all right, that puts any load that comes on the roof, like an accident or things like that, it actually puts the cage landing in shear, right? That means the energy is transferred this way. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to come through the bottom of the truck, and I want to come in about, I don't know, 85 degrees, something like that, so that my cage, when it ties into the frame, is a little bit of an angle like this, and that leaves the cage in compression, right, which is the strongest way to do it. So let's get to work on this.
Exótica. Exótica. Enter the world of Exótica. Be a disciple of Exótica. Exótica.
All right, so you guys, back here I found a perfect spot where I think I want to tie in my B pillar. So I guess I didn't explain that. It's very simple the way we label them, right? So you'll start at the front of the cab there. That's considered your A pillar. Then behind that, which usually you want to put that as far behind the driver and passenger as you can so that they don't hit their heads on tubes, things like that. You have to pay attention to those things. But I found a perfect spot right here where I think I want that tube to pass through. So I'm going to go ahead and punch a hole right up under here. It's going to give me a couple of inches of room, even if they were to go to a bigger tire. Right now this truck runs a 37. Even if they wanted to run a 39 or a 40 later on, I mean, you'd have to clearance the wheel wells and everything. But I want my structure to be able to clear that. That way you don't have to make major modifications to your chassis, right? Bodywork is one thing. Modifying your chassis to accept larger tires or any of those things, that's something the fabricator could have pre-planned and done a little bit better. So that is my goal. So I've got a spot right here. I'm going to go ahead and try to punch a hole through it. By the way, you don't want to do this with your mouth open, right? Things like that. Now, that's going to locate my B pillar. I can go inside, I can drill that from inside there, or I can drill it from up underneath here, but those little bits of metal you see coming off there, they're hot. So if they hit you in the lips or places like that, it hurts. So if you're going to do things with the bottom, be careful. But I actually have enough access. I can climb up into the passenger back seat there, and 9/16 is what I'm looking for here. Now, I know, and it's something to pay particular attention to, okay, the bend actually begins about a 1/2 inch in on the main die right here. So for me, for what I'm doing right here, okay, I actually have a mark on my die where I call true bend begins. And it's approximately a 1/2 inch inboard of the front face of this die. So I can use that as a measurement. So I have 3 9/16 right here. I'm going to move this line about a 1/2 inch, right? And that's going to set me up perfect. Trick that you want to pay attention to, I have a label that runs across this, this tube right here. A professional has the mind to go ahead and spin that to the inside, right? If you're using like a hot rolled electro seam tube or any of those things, you always want to put that seam to the inside. When you make a bend, the inside material compresses while the outside stretches. And that's something to stay conscious of. If you try to put the seam of a seam material on the outside, you run a very serious risk of basically a crack along that seam or exploding that seam. And I've seen it happen on both materials. So something to pay attention to. That's just a little bit of a difference between an amateur and a professional, is really trying to find symmetry and putting like your labels in specific areas, so on and so forth. That's stuff to pay attention to. So let's get this guy going here. All right, now I also said I need to move that about approximately a 1/2 inch, right? Long as I'm inside the die here, I should be in good shape. All right. Turn your seam down. I'm going to double check that measurement one more time. Perfect. All right. So here she goes. Now I don't know what angle I'm going to. This is going to be a game of feel. Okay. Once you've started to bend, taking it out and putting it back in the bender usually is not a problem because it only fits in one way at that point, right? So I'm not going to a full 90, all right? But we're going to come pretty close. And it's going to put us probably about 85 degrees or so. That's a guesstimate. I'm actually going to go with that right there. Alright, draw a little arrow, that's a reminder for myself, or I can draw the measurement on the tube right here, right? This is right after that bend we just did. I plan to come through my hole right here. And I'm actually going to tie into this bracket right here. So I'm going to use the roll cage to reinforce this intersection. Now I know this looks bolt-on, but this will never come off. And ultimately, if he starts getting pretty aggressive in this truck, bolt-on stuff, tends to be a bit lackluster once you start really hammering, and that's what I expect this customer to do. So I'm going to use it to reinforce this area. If that were ever a problem, they needed to remove this for whatever reason, it would not be very hard to cut and go ahead and integrate a flange or what we call a tube clamp. That's essentially like a glad hand style tube intersection. So I could do something like that later on. But for now, I'm going to tie into this. I'm going to use the roll cage to reinforce it, so it gives me a great area. So ultimately what I'm going for is this up in here to fit here, and right about there. So I need a little bit more bend, but you can kind of gauge an idea of what I'm going for, where I'm talking about I want to leave my cage in compression and not put it in shear. So this is a slight angle. I need a little bit more, but that's essentially the idea behind it.